We'll move on now to hear from the Swan Hill District Gender Equity Network. So this is a joint presentation with Elise Kelly, the Senior Health Promotion Officer at Swan Hill District Health, and Harry Schiegel, our lovely community member who's here in person in our PCP office at the moment. So first off, we've got Elise speaking. Thanks, Elise.
Thanks, Bronwyn. And you know, it's been such a sort of disjointed preparation for the forum, given that we nearly went last year and then I sort of put it on hold. So to my other presenters, thank you for reminding me that I was going to provide a background demographic for the Swan Hill area, which I have not done, but you would have seen a glimpse of the family violence stats in Emily's presentation there. About the number of family violence incidents across our 3 LGAs, and Swan Hill is obviously the LGA which experiences the most out of the 3 of us, so over 3,000 incidents of family violence per 100,000 population. So while Eden might be chucking my presentation up, for those that don't know, the Swan Hill LGA, we obviously also experience the same context as our other 2 LGAs do in terms of those rigid stereotypes, our large farming communities and those sort of things. So we also have a very high population of people with low socioeconomic status, increasing cultural diversity in our community. We also have the highest percentage of our population in the state who identifies Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander for our LGA. So that's the Swan Hill local government area in a snapshot of what I can think of off the top of my head, having not done those demographic info. But a lot of those stats are from the PCP fact sheets and things. So if anyone was interested in Swan Hill, I would direct them there. In terms of the Swan Hill District Gender Equity Network, so we were formerly the SMPCP Swan Hill Health and Wellbeing Partnership Preventing Family Violence Focus Working Group. As I'm sure is not surprising, we felt like that was too long and complicated a name. So we came up with the Swan Hill District Gender Equity Network. We really wanted to be the Swan Hill District. We debated quite a bit about our name. We can be a bit Swan Hill centric. So our LGA covers lots of towns other than Swan Hill. Our other major centre is Robinvale. So tried to create a name that would be inclusive of our whole area that we cover. We wanted to focus on gender equity, and we will touch on that equity equality. I know Harry will speak to that as well. But in terms of who we are, so I've put up our representatives on the slide here. So we're a broad group of representatives of organisations, but probably what we're most proud of, which can't be represented with a logo, is our community involvement. So we have multiple community members that have joined our network, and we really value their input. As the current chair of the network, you know, my vision would certainly be that we would love one day for this to be an entirely community-owned and community-driven network, and our service providers and other stakeholders are involved and support the work, but we would love this to be community-driven. So we're on the early stages of that journey. And how our community members got involved, I think, is also important to touch on. So some of the initiatives that this network has done around the 16 Days of Activism events. So we had, the 3 years ago now, 2 and a bit years ago, our first 16 Days of Activism event was held down at the local cafe. We then, the following year, for 2018, had an event down at Riverside Park, which is where Harry heard about us. And our other community member Jenny as well got involved that year. So we had an event down at the park, and we also linked in with a project through the Strengthening Hospital Responses to Family Violence, where it was a project with Leeds that was sent down to Melbourne, so we participated in that. And then last year, so for 2019, we joined So Mallee Domestic Violence, Mallee Sexual Assault, the local police and Department of Justice and Community Safety had done a barbecue the year before for the 16 days of activism. So our network jumped on board with that in 2019 and sort of combined all of our efforts, and we had a bit of a prevention focus at their barbecue with some information and resources around the Respect Victoria Call It Out campaign. So that was some of the sort of community events that the network's been involved in. What we're currently focusing on the network is some of those foundations from which we can build our work to promote gender equity. So late last year we finalised a resource, if you want to flick to that, Eden, yep, promoting gender equity in the Swan Hill district. So it was based on a resource in Bendigo. And the idea was to have a document created and owned by our network to guide our work, to provide a common voice and purpose, and to also act as a resource we could use when we're communicating to the community. You know, what is this gender equity thing and the prevention of violence against women? What's that all about? So I think because we are such a varied and diverse group of people, we represent organisations but also different parts of our community. So creating a guiding document to frame our work in this space we felt like was a good place to start with our sort of network, with our new name and increased community involvement. So we really want, if we want this network to have more community involvement and potentially be driven by community, we wanted to make sure that there was something that anchored our work and really sort of ensured the integrity of the work that we're doing, and pretty much so that people knew what they're signing up to. When they join this network, what are we about? Is there something tangible that we could use to communicate that? To articulate our purpose, our why, the language that we use, the stats that back up the real desperate need for this work to happen, and also some principles for action. So that sort of the document contains all of those things. We also wanted to highlight that change is possible. So we've got some stories of change in there. I've included this because I feel like this really personalises. It's included in our document. I've taken the name off there, but I've included the name of the document. So one of our network members, Kath, shared this certificate that she was given when she achieved her qualification. And it's all using male pronouns. So hereby, Kath has completed the period of his apprenticeship within the boundaries of the Swan Hill, has passed all the necessary examinations. They give public recognition to his honoured status. He is reminded of the ancient traditions, and he has therefore earnestly enjoyed the following in the steps of those who have gone before him. So, we have come a long way from where, someone that wrote this certificate never imagined that a woman might be achieving that qualification as Kath did. And so to sort of, articulate that change has happened, it can happen, and will continue on this journey. So that's in our document as well. We also have a glossary of terms sort of thing at the end, which we felt was really important, so that this document could act as a resource for people who don't work in this space, who aren't professionals and trained and that sort of thing. We wanted to be able to tease out some of those intricacies of the language around family violence, violence against women, domestic violence, primary prevention, what that is, as we've discussed today. It's not, we didn't want to have that assumed knowledge, and if we wanted to communicate to community, we felt like that was really important. We've got a priority in there, and really what we want to be doing is exploring how we're going to promote gender equity in the Swan Hill district, focusing on community engagement and capacity building. So we've created this document, we've finished it. Now it's about how do we use it, how do we communicate to community what we're about, how do we do some action, and we're certainly within the same constraints as everyone else in terms of not having dedicated resourcing to be able to do that. We've got our fabulous community members that this is obviously not a core part of their business, it's something they're passionate about and they're involved in. And then for the professionals on the network, this isn't necessarily a core part of any of our roles. We're all stretched in different directions. So where to next is our discussion of where we're at at the moment. So on that note, I just want to hand over to Harry to talk about his involvement in the network, how he came involved, and yeah, over to Harry.
I'm a bit closer. I can go ahead.
Yep.
Ready to go. I'm Harry Schlegel, so I'm the community member up here in Swan Hill. And I noticed before when we were logging in, Jenny's there somewhere as well, which is good. So we've got a bit of a diverse range even in community members, because Jenny represents the LGBTQI community, which is quite good. So just a little bit of background info on myself and sort of how I got involved with the group here. So what happened was about 2 years ago, 2018, on the 16 days of activism, they had down at the Riverside Park, they had a little gathering down there for to do with gender equity and so forth, and to do with family violence, basically. I think might have been what it said. Now, my sister, unfortunately, was killed by her ex-partner back in 2008, and so this is quite close to my heart. So anyway, so I went along to there, and as far as being part of the network here now, the rest is history in a sense. I was made to feel really welcome. They also asked details if anyone was interested, and I think it might have been where Jenny joined up as well. So yeah, so it sort of progressed from there. As I said, so the main reason I joined was the support of my sister, but also it needs to be a change of attitudes. You know, when I think about just my history, as in 1973, when I worked in the bank. A bit more background first. So I brought up with 6 sisters, so I'm the only male. We're all treated exactly the same at home. You know, my sisters come out fishing and shooting with us, and I'd be there having, so I can sew basic on the sewing machine. I can do a little bit of cooking, but yeah, so we're treated exactly the same. My shock came when I joined the bank in 1973. So I'm there as the junior, and I was there doing the pay, and I realised some of the other tellers that were working next to me, the female tellers who'd been there for years, they're getting less pay than me. I just couldn't believe that such a thing was happening in society. And that was, as I say, 1973. So I was quite shocked. So that was probably my first, I suppose, view on seeing how equal things weren't. Anyway, eventually, as we know, I think the bank might have been quite far behind in as far as equal opportunities, equal pay anyway. But yeah, eventually that's happened. But there's still lots of inequalities even now. Next thing I wanted to talk about was, that's right, I've got my little notes here. Oh, actually, before I go any further, you've got that one too, have you? That one. Yes, quite proud of the in-house journalist here. The in-house journalist is going all red now. Thank you, Tony. You did an absolutely brilliant job. So, yeah. Tony interviewed me and then did this particular article. The other one on the right-hand side, this must end, is just a little bit there about why I joined up. So that article was done at the actual Riverside Park back in 2018. It's interesting, my travellings around, people ask me, because I'm in quite a few other committees and so forth, and they'll ask me, and I'll tell them, yes, I'm in the Gender Equity Committee, and they ask me, oh, what's that? I have to explain it to them. And the way I explain it to them, and I shouldn't look at this picture now, it's right in front of me, actually, the equality, equity picture. Because what normally happens is I don't have that with me and I explain it as it is in my head. And I've realised now that I've looked at it, there's a couple of little things that are different. But it doesn't matter, the gist of it is exactly the same. So how I tell them the story is that there is an adult, a child and a person in a wheelchair. They've turned up to the football, to watch the football, but there's a high fence around the footy oval. Well, the adult doesn't have a problem at all looking over the fence. Of course, the child and the person in a wheelchair can't see. So to make it more equitable is that the child then is provided, and this is where I realised I'd make a mistake. I was saying the child is provided with a step ladder. As you can see, it's a funny sort of step ladder there. It's actually 2 boxes. So the child can see over the fence. And then the person in the wheelchair is provided a ramp. So now they can all see over the fence and it's nice and equitable. So sometimes to make things equal, we have to provide people with things to actually rise to that occasion, to get it up to being equal. And I think they usually get it then, so they understand it. And that's the best way I can explain it. And that actual cartoon diagram is in our little guideline booklet. For those that are interested, I've got a few copies. The other thing I was going to talk about is, as far as now being a community member on this, what I'm finding is that it's very empowering. I feel that I've got a voice. I have lived experience, obviously, because of what happened to my sister. And so, yeah, basically, I just want to make sure it gets out there that we should all be the same, equal. As I said, I was shocked back in 1973 that things weren't equal. They've come a long way, but they've still got a way distance to go. And then the other thing I have noticed, so I retired early from primary school teaching. Unfortunately, I had to retire through mental illness, so I had to live with depression and PTSD. PTSD, unfortunately, brought on through sitting through the court case of my sister's murder. And so what I've lost my train of thought. So with my experiences in, obviously, so I'm also an advocate for mental health, so I'm on a couple of committees for that as well. But as I say, with the experiences now from moving from Melbourne up to Swan Hill, so I retired from Melbourne, moved up here to Swan Hill. What I have found, there is a huge difference in as far as racism, sexism, and unfortunately, I think the area here is quite behind by many years in that sense. And statistically, as we've seen, certainly as far as family violence, you know, the rate of family violence in our area here is far, it's the greatest rate in the whole state. And having said that, this morning on the radio, I heard that the statistics for the Swan Hill area have gone up again. So I can't remember, it was 6%, I think it might have been increase over the last 12 months. So, you know, it's certainly not decreasing at the moment. Unfortunately, it will take generations to change. It'd be nice if we could just, you know, flick our finger and it'll all be changed, but unfortunately it will take several generations. But we'll get there eventually. And finally, as I said, I want to thank Tony for her brilliant article in the Guardian that she did. A couple of things that I wanted to mention, which I didn't realise that there was a 10-year plan on this, starting from 2018. I think that came up very early on in our little forum here. My problem with that is it's a 10-year plan, yet the PCPs here, for instance, they were funded till June, and there's been a real struggle for them to get funding, but all of a sudden now they've been given another 6 months. Whoopie-doo. What, till the end of December? What happens then? What, this all falls apart? Personally, I think this funding needs to continue. It should have been for at least another 5 years, not this 6 months. It's a waste of time. You know, the staff here obviously put their heart and soul into it. And then you've got us community members that feel quite passionate about it as well. And then just to put funding up for another 6 months, I actually think it's really disgraceful. We need more money. Before I go, so I know that Buloke and Gannawarra Shires, you are on here as well. I'm quite happy to come out and travel if you need someone to a bit of a chat or a guest speaker or whatever. I'm quite happy to come out and have a bit of a chat. The only thing it'll cost you is a cup of coffee, as I always tell people. It doesn't cost you any money, just a cup of coffee, please. And that's probably it. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm not shy in answering them. And even if it's not to do with the family violence, if it's to do with my depression or PTSD, as I said, the PTSD unfortunately was brought on because of sitting through the court case and seeing things that I shouldn't have had to see that are now permanently etched into my brain. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Harry and Elise. We are so grateful of the participation and the support that you provide, particularly Harry and Jenny and other community members in the Swan Hill and District's Gender Equity Forum. It's fantastic, and it's been raised a couple of times through today about that importance of community engagement. There's steps towards looking at that, and that generous offer, Harry, to Gannawarra and Buloke is great. There's a lot to learn from you around how we might as organisations and as a partnership go about that and do that right and do that better.